Daniel Carter stood in the shadows of the great hall and watched the nobles glide past him like he did not exist. Their long bodies moved with grace that humans could never match. Their compound eyes reflected the golden light of 1,000 floating lanterns. Their chitinous shells gleamed with oils and precious metals that cost more than Daniel would earn in 10 lifetimes. None of them looked at him. To them, he was furniture. He was a tool. He was human. 3 years he had served in this palace. 3 years of silence and patience and swallowed pride. The empire stretched across 800 star systems and commanded fleets that could burn entire worlds to ash. Humanity had only discovered faster-than-light travel 40 years ago. In the eyes of the galaxy, humans were children stumbling into a room full of ancient giants. They were given the jobs no one else wanted. They cleaned. They carried. They served. Daniel had been different. A transport accident had put him in the right place at the wrong time, and he had pulled a minor noble from a burning shuttle without thinking about the consequences. The noble had survived. Daniel had earned burns across his back that still ached on cold mornings, and somehow that act of instinct had earned him a position that no human had ever held before. He was the personal guardian of Princess. The princess was young by standards. She had lived only 90 years and would not reach adulthood for another 10. Her shell was a pale violet color that marked her as royalty. Her eyes held a curiosity that the other nobles had long since lost, and unlike every other in the palace, she actually spoke to Daniel like he was a person. He saw her now crossing the hall with her attendants trailing behind her. She moved toward him, and her mandibles clicked in what he had learned was a smile. "Daniel," she said, "you look troubled." "I am always troubled, Your Highness. It is my job." Made a sound that was her species' version of laughter. "You worry too much. The Festival of Ascension is a time of celebration. Tomorrow I receive my adult titles. The entire empire will be watching. What could possibly go wrong?" Daniel did not answer. He had learned that when someone asked what could go wrong, the universe often took it as a challenge. Instead, he walked beside her as she continued through the hall. Her attendants kept their distance. They did not approve of the princess spending time with a human, but they could not openly defy her. "I spoke with Commander today," Daniel said quietly. "I told him about the changes in the servant rotations, new faces in places where there should be none. He dismissed my concerns." "Dismisses everything that comes from humans." "That does not make my concerns less valid." Stopped walking and turned to face him. Her compound eyes studied him with an intensity that always made him feel like she was seeing something beneath his skin. "You truly believe there is danger?" "I believe that tomorrow you will stand before thousands of nobles and dignitaries from across the empire. I believe that your mother has enemies who would benefit from your death. And I believe that no one is taking this threat seriously because the warning comes from a human." The princess was silent for a long moment. Then she reached out with one of her smaller manipulator arms and touched his shoulder. It was a gesture of trust that no noble would ever show to a human in public. "Then I will trust you to keep me safe. You have never failed me." Daniel felt the weight of those words settle onto his shoulders. "I will not fail you tomorrow." They parted ways, and Daniel spent the rest of the evening walking the palace grounds. He checked every entrance and exit. He mapped the positions of the guards and noted which ones were alert and which ones were lazy. He climbed to the upper galleries of the ceremonial hall where the festival would take place and measured sight lines and angles of attack. The guards watched him with contempt, but none of them stopped him. He was beneath their notice. It was past midnight when he finally returned to his small quarters near the princess's chambers. The room was barely larger than a closet. The bed was too short for his human frame. The walls were bare metal without decoration or warmth. But it was his, and it was close to, and that was all that mattered. He sat on the edge of the bed and pulled out a small photograph. It showed a woman with gray hair and kind eyes standing in front of a small house on Earth. His mother. She had died 2 years ago, and he had not been allowed to return home for the funeral. They did not understand human grief. They did not understand why he would want to travel across the galaxy just to stand beside a hole in the ground. Daniel put the photograph away and lay back on the bed. Sleep would not come easily. It never did before moments of potential danger. His mind kept running through scenarios and possibilities. The new servants, the upper galleries, the 1,000 ways an assassin could strike in a crowded hall. He thought about, and the trust she placed in him. He thought about the other humans scattered across the galaxy who were treated as less than nothing by species who had been traveling the stars for. He thought about what it would mean if he failed tomorrow, not just for himself, not just for the princess, but for every human who might one day want to be seen as something more than a servant. The weight of it pressed down on him, but he did not let it crush him. He had carried weight before. He had survived burns and scars and years of contempt. He had stood in the shadows and watched and waited and learned. Tomorrow he would do what he had always done. He would protect the princess. He would prove that humans were worth more than the galaxy believed. And if something went wrong, he would give everything he had to keep safe. That was not a question. That was not a choice. That was simply who Daniel Carter was. He closed his eyes and waited for morning to come. The ceremonial hall blazed with light and color as thousands of nobles gathered for the Festival of Ascension. Floating platforms carried dignitaries from distant star systems. Holographic banners displayed the royal family's crest in shimmering gold and violet. Musicians played instruments that created sounds no human ear could fully appreciate. The air itself seemed to hum with ancient power and tradition. Daniel stood 3 steps behind Princess and kept his eyes moving. He wore the simple gray uniform of a palace servant because Commander had refused to give him proper guard armor. It did not matter. Armor would not help him see threats any faster. His eyes were his weapons today, and they never stopped scanning the crowd. He sat upon a throne of crystallized starlight at the far end of the hall. She was ancient even by standards. Her shell had darkened to a deep purple that was almost black. Her eyes held the cold calculation of a ruler who had commanded an empire for over 500 years. She had spoken to Daniel exactly once in his 3 years of service. She had looked at him like he was an insect that had somehow learned to walk upright. Then she had dismissed him from her presence without a word. The ceremony began with prayers to gods that Daniel did not understand. Priests in elaborate robes chanted phrases in the old tongue. Incense that smelled like burning copper filled the air. The crowd fell silent as Queen rose from her throne and descended the steps toward her daughter. Looked beautiful in her ceremonial dress. Jewels had been woven into the joints of her shell. Ribbons of pure light wrapped around her limbs. She stood perfectly still as her mother approached, but Daniel could see the slight tremor in her smaller arms. She was nervous. She was young. She was counting on him to keep her safe. The queen began the blessing ritual. She placed her larger arms on shoulders and spoke words that had been spoken at every ascension for 10,000 years. The crowd watched in reverent silence. Cameras broadcast the ceremony to every corner of the empire. Billions of witnessed this moment. Daniel was not watching the ceremony. He was watching the upper galleries. He had checked them himself the night before. He had mapped every position and measured every angle, and now he saw something that should not be there. A shadow where no shadow should exist. A flicker of movement behind a support column. His heart began to pound. He took a step forward, then another. His eyes locked onto that shadow and refused to look away. The blessing continued below him. The queen's voice filled the hall with ancient words. No one noticed the human servant moving toward the edge of the crowd. Then he saw it, a figure in dark clothing rising from behind the column, a weapon in its hands. The long barrel of a molecular disruptor pointed directly at Princess. Daniel did not think. He did not calculate. He did not weigh his own life against the life of the princess. He simply moved. He crossed the distance between himself, and in 3 heartbeats, he heard someone shout. He saw the flash of the weapon firing, and then he threw himself between the blast and the princess. The molecular disruptor was designed to tear apart the armored shells of warriors. It hit Daniel's human body and ripped through him like he was made of paper. He felt the impact. He felt the burning. He felt things inside him breaking and tearing and coming apart. Then he felt nothing at all below his chest. He fell, caught him. Her arms wrapped around his broken body and lowered him to the ground. Her compound eyes were wide with horror. Her mandibles clicked sounds that might have been screams or words or prayers. "Daniel," she said. "Daniel, no, Daniel, please." He could hear chaos erupting around them. Guards shouting, nobles fleeing, weapons firing in the upper galleries as the assassin was pursued. But all of that seemed very far away. All he could see was space above him. All he could feel was her arms holding him. "It is all right," he said. His voice was weak. He could taste blood in his mouth. "You are safe. You cannot die, I forbid it. Daniel, you cannot die." He tried to smile. He did not know if his face obeyed him anymore. "Thank you for treating me like a person. It was the greatest honor of my life, protecting you." Queen appeared beside her daughter. Her ancient eyes looked down at Daniel with an expression he could not read. She had never looked at him before. Not really, but she was looking at him now. "The human saved her," someone said. "He took the blast meant for the princess." Daniel's vision was growing dark. He could feel himself slipping away. But before he went, he looked up at the queen and saw something he had never expected to see in those cold alien eyes. He saw grief. "I am sorry," he whispered. He did not know who he was apologizing to. His mother, who he would never see again, who he was leaving behind. All the humans across the galaxy who he had wanted to make proud. Then Daniel Carter closed his eyes and died in the arms of the princess he had sworn to protect. The assassin was captured minutes later. He had been paid by enemies of the Empire to kill the princess and destabilize the throne. He would be executed within the week. But none of that mattered to who sat on the floor of the ceremonial hall and held the body of her guardian. None of that mattered to Queen, who stood above her daughter and stared at the dead human with eyes that had not known confusion in 300 years. A human had given his life for her child. A creature she had dismissed as primitive and worthless had sacrificed everything without hesitation. And somewhere deep inside her ancient heart, something cracked open that she did not have a name for. The Festival of Ascension was canceled. The ceremony would be completed another day. But something had happened in that hall that could never be undone. A human had proven that he was worth more than his species. And a queen had begun to question everything she thought she knew about worth and honor and sacrifice. 3 days passed and Queen did not sleep. She sat in her private chambers and watched the security recordings again and again. The same moment repeated on the screen before her. The flash of the weapon, the human throwing himself forward, the impact that destroyed his body, the fall, the death. She had watched it 117 times. She could not stop. Her advisors came and went with reports about the investigation, the Dominion involvement. Diplomatic tensions were rising. The Empire demanded justice, listened to none of it. She dismissed them all with waves of her arm and returned to the recordings. "You need to rest, Mother." Stood in the doorway. She looked smaller than she had before the festival. Her shell had lost some of its shine. Her eyes were dull with grief that her species rarely felt so deeply. "I am fine," said. "You are not fine. Neither am I." Entered the room and sat beside her mother. "I cannot stop thinking about him, about Daniel." The queen was silent for a long moment. Then she asked a question she had never thought to ask before. "Tell me about him." Looked at her mother with surprise. "You never wanted to know before." "I am asking now." So told her. She told her about the stories Daniel would share about Earth, about the blue oceans and green forests and cities filled with millions of humans living their short lives with such intensity. She told her about his patience and his kindness, how he would stand for hours in the cold rain because he knew she liked to watch the storms, how he learned to read her moods when no one else could, how he never complained about the insults and the contempt even though she knew they hurt him. "He was good," said. "He was simply good, and no one saw it but me." Watch the recording play again. The moment of impact, the fall, the death. "I did not see it. I looked at him and saw nothing worth seeing." He knew that. He served anyway. The queen closed her eyes. Something burned inside her chest, an emotion she had not felt in centuries. Guilt, shame, grief for someone she had never bothered to know. "I have ruled this empire for 500 years, she said. "I have ordered the deaths of millions. I have watched worlds burn for the good of my people. I thought I understood sacrifice. I thought I understood loyalty, but that human." She opened her eyes and stared at the frozen image on the screen. He did not hesitate, not for a single moment. He saw the danger and he moved. He did not think about his own life. He did not calculate the odds. He simply gave everything he had. That is who he was. Then he was better than me, better than all of us. Did not argue. She simply sat beside her mother and shared her grief. Later that night called for the oldest priest in the palace. He was ancient even by her standards. His shell was cracked and worn. His eyes had gone cloudy with age, but his mind was still sharp and he knew things that had been forgotten by everyone else. "I need to know about the resurrection engine," she said. The priest went very still. "That is forbidden knowledge, heresy. The Galactic Assembly declared it so 10,000 years ago. I am the queen. Nothing is forbidden to me." "This is," the priest's voice trembled. "The resurrection engine was built by the architects before they vanished from the galaxy. It can pull the dead back from wherever they go after life ends. but using it is considered the greatest crime in galactic law. Any species that activates it faces total war from every other power. Where is it? Your Majesty, please. This path leads only to destruction. Rose from her throne and towered over the old priest. Her eyes burned with something that had not been there 3 days ago. A human died for my daughter. He gave his life without hesitation to save someone he loved, and no one in this empire thought he was worth anything. I thought he was worth nothing. I was wrong. I was so terribly wrong, and I will make it right. The priest stared at her with horror and wonder. You would risk the empire for a single human. I would risk everything. She leaned close. Now tell me where the resurrection engine is hidden. The priest was silent for a long time, then he bowed his head. The forgotten world of 7, at the edge of charted space. The engine is there, protected by defenses that have killed everyone who tried to reach it. Then I will be the first to succeed. The galaxy will turn against you. Everything you have built will be threatened. Turned away and walked to the window. Outside the palace, the capital city glittered with lights. Millions of her people lived and worked and never thought about the humans who served among them, never thought about what those humans might sacrifice. Then let the galaxy come, she said. I have watched that recording 117 times. I have seen a human give his life for my child. I have seen more courage in that single moment than I have seen in 500 years of ruling this empire. Daniel Carter deserves to live, and I will bring him back, no matter what it costs. The priest left without another word. He knew better than to argue with his queen when she spoke with that fire in her voice. Stood at the window and watched the stars. Somewhere out there among the distant lights was the world called 7. Somewhere out there was the power to undo death itself. She would find it, she would use it, and she would bring Daniel Carter home. The royal ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system, and Queen stood on the bridge surrounded by the 50 soldiers she had chosen for this mission. They were the best warriors in her empire. They were loyal beyond question, and they had all volunteered to die for their queen. Your Majesty, the ship captain said, we are receiving transmissions from the Galactic Assembly. Ambassador is demanding that we turn back immediately. Ignore him. He says the Dominion will consider this an act of war. The Assembly is threatening sanctions. The other empires are mobilizing their fleets. Did not look away from the world of 7 hung before her. It was a dead planet, gray and barren and ancient. Somewhere beneath its surface the resurrection engine waited. Open a channel, she said. Broadcast to all frequencies. The captain hesitated, then he obeyed. Spoke to the galaxy. Her voice carried across the stars to every ship and station and world that was listening. This is Queen of the Empire. I know you are watching. I know you are afraid. The resurrection engine is forbidden. Its use is heresy, and I am going to use it anyway. She paused. On 100,000 worlds, beings held their breath. 10 days ago, a human died to save my daughter. His name was Daniel Carter. He was a servant, a bodyguard, someone my people considered worthless because of the species he was born into. But when the moment came, he did not hesitate. He threw himself between my child and death. He gave everything he had without asking for anything in return. Her voice grew stronger. Her eyes burned with conviction. I have ruled my empire for 500 years. I have seen acts of courage and cowardice from every species in the galaxy. I have watched the great and the powerful fail when they were tested. But I have never seen anything like what Daniel Carter did. He was better than us. He was worth more than all of us, and I will not let his sacrifice go unrewarded. Your laws say that resurrection is forbidden. Your laws say that I must let the dead stay dead. But your laws are wrong. When someone gives their life for another, they deserve more than a grave. They deserve a second chance. And I will give Daniel Carter that chance even if I have to fight the entire galaxy to do it. She cut the transmission. The bridge was silent. Take us down, she said. The ship descended through the gray atmosphere of 7. Ancient structures rose from the surface. Towers and domes and walls built by the architects who had vanished from the galaxy a million years ago. No one knew where they had gone. No one knew why they had left. All that remained were their ruins and their machines. The landing party assembled at the main hatch. 50 soldiers in combat armor, weapons charged and ready. Queen stood at the front. She had not worn armor in 300 years, but she wore it now. They marched into the ruins. The defenses activated immediately. Energy beams cut down the first wave of soldiers. Automated drones swarmed from hidden chambers. Walls shifted and changed to create traps and dead ends. Watched her warriors die one by one as they pushed deeper into the ancient complex. "Your Majesty," her commander said, "we are taking heavy losses. We should retreat and regroup." "No, we push forward." "But Your Majesty." Daniel Carter did not retreat. He did not hesitate. He did not calculate the odds. She raised her weapon and fired at an approaching drone. "Neither will I." They fought their way through corridors filled with death. 20 soldiers died, then 30. The defenses were relentless. They had been designed to stop entire armies, and they very nearly succeeded. But would not stop. She led from the front. She took wounds that would have killed a younger. She kept moving because Daniel Carter had kept moving, because he had shown her what true courage looked like. Finally, they reached the heart of the complex, a vast chamber filled with light, and at the center, a machine that hummed with power beyond anything the modern galaxy could build. The resurrection engine. A voice filled the chamber. It seemed to come from everywhere at once. "I am the keeper. I guard this place. Why have you come?" Step forward. Blood ran from wounds across her shell. She had lost 43 soldiers. She stood with only 7 remaining. "I have come to bring someone back from death. Many have come before you. All have failed. Why should you succeed?" "Because I am not doing this for power or ambition or greed." She met the invisible presence with her ancient eyes. "I am doing this because a human named Daniel Carter gave his life for my daughter. He was considered worthless by my people. He was considered primitive and inferior, but he proved himself better than all of us. He deserves to live again." The keeper was silent for a long moment. Then it spoke again. "You would risk your empire for a single human." "I have already risked it. The galaxy prepares for war against me as we speak." "And yet you came anyway." "I came because he taught me something I had forgotten, something the galaxy has forgotten. There is no greater love than giving your life for another. Daniel Carter showed me that truth. I will honor it." Another long silence. The machine hummed, the light pulsed. "Very well," the keeper said. "You are worthy, but resurrection requires a price. To bring back one life, another must give years of their own existence. How many years will you offer?" "Did not hesitate. 100 years." Her remaining soldiers gasped. For 100 years was not a small thing. It was a century of life given away, a century she would never have. But she had watched Daniel Carter give everything in a single moment. What was 100 years compared to that? "Accepted," the keeper said. "Place your hand upon the engine. Think of the one you wish to return, and let the machine do its work." Queen walked forward and placed her hand on the resurrection engine. She closed her eyes. She thought of Daniel Carter, his quiet courage, his steady eyes, his final words to her daughter. The machine blazed with light. Power surged through the chamber, and somewhere in the void between life and death, a human soul began the long journey home. Daniel Carter opened his eyes and drew a breath that tasted like fire and starlight. He was lying on a cold metal floor. Light surrounded him. Strange sounds filled his ears. For a long moment he could not remember who he was or where he was or why his body felt like it had been unmade and rebuilt from nothing. Then the memories came rushing back. The ceremony, the assassin, the blast, arms around him, the darkness. He sat up and looked at his hands. They were his hands, the same scars, the same calluses, but they felt different. They felt new. Daniel Carter. He looked up. Queen stood before him. She looked older than he remembered, weaker, but her eyes burned with something he had never seen there before. "Your Majesty," his voice was rough. His throat felt like it had never been used. "What happened? I remember dying." "You did die. I brought you back." He stared at her. The words did not make sense. "That is impossible." "It was forbidden. It was dangerous. It may have started a war." Knelt beside him. The queen of the greatest empire in the galaxy knelt beside a human servant. "But I could not let you stay dead, not after what you did for my daughter." Daniel looked around the chamber. He saw the machine, the resurrection engine. He had heard stories about it. Everyone had. Ancient technology from a species that had vanished before humanity learned to make fire. Using it was supposed to be the greatest crime in galactic law. "You risked everything," he said, "for me. You gave everything for—" The queen's voice was soft, almost gentle. "I watched the recordings of your death more times than I can count. I saw the moment you moved. There was no hesitation, no calculation. You simply acted. You gave your life without asking for anything in return. She is my princess. I swore to protect her. And you kept your oath, even unto death. Rose and offered him her hand. Now rise, Daniel Carter. You have earned the right to stand. He took her hand. She pulled him to his feet. His legs were unsteady, but they held him. They left the chamber together. The 7 surviving soldiers formed an honor guard around them. They walked through corridors still filled with the bodies of fallen warriors. 43 had died to bring him back. Daniel looked at each of them as he passed. They volunteered, said, every one of them. When I told them what I planned to do, they fought for the honor of coming with me. Why? Because your sacrifice meant something, not just to me, not just to everyone who heard about it. She looked at him with those ancient eyes. You showed the galaxy what humans are capable of. You showed us that your species has something we have lost, something precious. They reached the ship. They left the dead world behind. And as they traveled back towards space, Daniel learned what had happened while he was dead. The galaxy had erupted into chaos. The Galactic Assembly had condemned actions. The Dominion had declared war. A dozen other empires had threatened sanctions and blockades. But something else had happened too, something unexpected. Humans across the galaxy had risen up, not in violence, in pride. They had heard the story of Daniel Carter, the servant who gave his life for a princess, the human who was worth more than empires. They had begun to demand respect. They had begun to believe in themselves. And other species had listened. Not all of them, but enough. Enough voices had spoken out and said that maybe the queen was right. Maybe the old laws were wrong. Maybe sacrifice should be honored no matter what species made it. The war that everyone expected did not come. Instead, there were negotiations, arguments, debates that lasted for weeks. And in the end, the galaxy reached a compromise that no one had thought possible. The resurrection engine would remain forbidden, but Daniel Carter would be allowed to live, and humanity would be recognized as a species worthy of respect. When the royal ship arrived at the Daniel found Princess waiting at the landing pad. She ran toward him before the ramp had fully lowered. Her arms wrapped around him, and she held him like she would never let go. You came back, she said. You came back. Your mother brought me back. He held her gently. She risked everything. She changed, looked up at him. You changed her, you changed all of us. The days that followed were strange and overwhelming. Daniel was given quarters in the palace that were larger than any home he had ever known. Ambassadors from across the galaxy came to meet the human who had inspired a queen to defy death. He stood beside at official functions, and no one looked at him like he was furniture anymore. One evening summoned him to her private chambers. She sat by the window where she had stood when she made her decision to find the resurrection engine. The stars glittered beyond the glass. I need to ask you something, she said, and I want an honest answer. Of course, Your Majesty. Why did you do it? In that moment when you saw the weapon, why did you throw yourself in front of it? Daniel thought about the question. He remembered the flash of light, the certainty of death, the absolute clarity of that single moment. Because it was the right thing to do, he said. Because trusted me. Because she treated me like a person when no one else would. I could not let her die, not while I had breath in my body. Nodded slowly. I have lived for over 800 years. I have commanded fleets and conquered worlds and built an empire that stretches across the stars. But I never understood what you just said, not until I watched you die. And now I understand. She looked at him with eyes that had finally learned to see him. Some lives are worth more than empires. Some sacrifices cannot be measured. You taught me that, Daniel Carter. You taught the entire galaxy. He bowed his head. I am just a human. No, the queen of the empire smiled for the first time in centuries. You are something more, and so is your species. We just needed someone to show us. Daniel returned to his duties. He stood at side as her guardian and her friend. He watched humanity's place in the galaxy slowly change as more and more species began to see what he had shown them. It would take years. It would take generations. But the change had begun. And it had all started with a single act of sacrifice. A human throwing himself between death and the one he had sworn to protect. A queen who saw that sacrifice and refused to let it go unrewarded. Daniel Carter had given his life for the princess. And when he did, the entire galaxy learned what humanity was truly worth.